Hi guys, in this video we're going to go through different sharpening methods and my thoughts on, what I've experienced over the years and what we kind of do here at the school. Let's start right from the beginning, back in my kind of apprenticeship days that, clearly that some of the micro lapping film and all the rest of it weren't available. They weren't, you couldn't buy them, didn't exist. So I started off with oil stones. So, that's the system that I had. I had a kind of range of oil stones, which of course you have to. You have to have, a coarse one, a medium, and then maybe a few kind of fine ones. And then, yeah, they're okay. They're quite slow at kind of cutting, like they're okay, but you have to have a range of them, and then that can cost you a bit of money as an initial kind of outlay. And I'll kind of discuss that a lot because it is very important, especially if you're first kind of starting out. So, starting oil stones, they're okay. They don't cut extremely fast when you get to the kind of finer ones. You have to use oil on them, which is fine. You have to use oil on them. That's just what it is. Downsides, I guess, yes, the initial cost for, like 4 of them or 5 of them. You have to keep them flat. So that's something that you have to kind of, you either use an abrasive paper or some other means of getting them flat, but they don't go out flat very quickly versus kind of water stones. But they're okay, but there's not a great, big surface area here as well. So that, I'll go through, this is going to be again, many sequence of videos. There's a link in the description for an index of the different videos we have. So see that if you want to see other ones. This is just going to be different sharpening methods. And then I'll do sharpening and so on and so forth kind of after that. So oil stones, yeah, that's my kind of general thought. I don't really use them anymore. I've kept my fine one. This is an Arkansas stone. It was quite expensive and it's very fine, and it comes out every now and again, but that's the only one I've kind of kept really. After that I moved on to water stones. Still used oil occasionally, but not that much. Used kind of water stones, and again you have to have a range of water stones. So because you have to have a coarse one. Sorry about that noise, someone's routing outside if you can hear it. You have to have a range, as in grit size. I'm not going to go through all the different grits. You have to do a bit more research, but you have to have a coarse one, a medium one, a fine, and then maybe a really, really fine one. So minimum 3. Sometimes you get them, they're double-sided. I've got one in here that's got a kind of, could be a coarse grit and a fine grit kind of stuck on there. They're okay, but still that wouldn't be enough. You would probably need 2 of those, or maybe 3. Pros and cons, pros that they cut very fast, as in they sharpen quite quickly, which is obviously a benefit over oil stones. Downside is you can, well, there's a few downsides I guess. One of the main ones is that you can hollow this out. The more you use it, then you hollow this out. It gets, the material gets kind of worn down, so you have to kind of sand this, an abrasive paper on a flat surface. Whether you stick some abrasive paper to a piece of glass and kind of sand it, or a machine bed, or a granite block, which we do here at the school, you just need an abrasive paper and you kind of sand it. Whether you add water to it to do that is kind of up to you. You can sometimes do it dry, but it clogs up, so water's probably best to kind of, flatten the surface down. And you have to do that quite a lot, and that's what lots of people don't do with little experience, that they don't flatten these, and then you get the bottom of your plane blades and chisels, you get them out of flat. So that's a big downside for me, for why I've stopped kind of using these. Another thing, I've had very expensive water stones in the past, I don't have many now, that you can gouge, you can dig into these. You can kind of, if you're sharpening with small blades, small chisels and things like that, because this is softer, it's always going to be softer than oil stones, you can dig into it. And it's just very annoying if you gouge into your kind of stone lots of times, where you have to do a lot of flattening to make it flat again. So that was one of the things I didn't quite like. Also the surface area as well. And you're supposed to do a kind of figure of 8 type thing with sharpening. But again, I'll go into a lot more detail in sharpening in another video. So I moved on, don't get me wrong, I like water stones, I do. But if you're not disciplined enough to use them, then you know, they can give you problems essentially, especially if it's first starting out, a bit of a novice. And also, like I said, there's a cost factor involved, you know, associated with it, because, you know, buy a really cheap one, well, then it's not going to be that good. Buy a very expensive one, well, it could cost you 80 or 90 pounds just for one. So you're talking a lot of money, and if you're not sure if furniture making is for you, do you want to spend, you know, 200 and some odd pounds on a few different Waterstones and realise you don't like it anymore, or they don't work for you? So again, we'll kind of move on, but you do need to keep your Waterstones submerged. This one I'm not using, this is just for demonstration purposes. So you have to keep like a Tupperware tub or some kind of tub, and it needs to be sat in water. You can't use these dry. You have to use them when they've been saturated for a certain amount of time, and then take them out, and you have to add water to this when you're sharpening. So again, there's that mess and stuff that's involved as well, but it depends what you're used to, really. After that, I kind of, I moved on to using this kind of micro finishing film or micro lapping film, but I'll discuss that kind of last. So, like other sharpening systems are ceramic. So these are kind of, it's ceramic that's been stuck to like glass. This one's a super, super fine one. Again, these are expensive. Ceramic sharpening stones. I've sharpened on these a tiny bit because they were like donated to us. Yes, they're very expensive. Ceramic, and again, you need to have like 3 or 4 or 5 ceramic kind of sharpening stones, and again, a range of grits that, because they're ceramic, they are very hard, so they're not going to wear down very quickly. I would use water as a kind of lubricant to sharpen on these. There might be other lubricants out there, but I don't know 100% for ceramic because I'm not an expert on them, but I have used them a bit. But again, they're very expensive. And again, do you want to spend £300, £400 on a whole set of these? It's not going to make your sharpening the best in the world. Just because you spend a load of money on something doesn't mean it's going to do it for you. You still need to know the skills on sharpening. So ceramic is very similar to kind of Waterstone, but clearly it's very, very hard. It's ceramic, so it's very, very hard. Next on the list is diamond stones. So I've used them a bit in my kind of career, not a huge amount. They're good, and why are they good? Because they remove a hell of a lot of material very quickly. This one is a trend, like a trend diamond stone. It's two-sided, so it's got 300, I don't know whether it's 300 grit or microns, I'm not quite sure, probably grit. It's 300 grit here, and then it's got 1,000 here, so it's a bit smoother. In my experience, this one was not a cheap one, but it also wasn't very expensive. They are expensive anyway. Let's say this was, like, off the top of my head, like £85 or something like that. You're not going to get the same result. You know, this doesn't kind of replace, you know, the oil stone, that. It's just, this sometimes is a tool in your arsenal if you chip a corner off of something and you need to remove a lot of material, then the diamond stone is the one for it. Or if you use tungsten carbide router cutters and stuff like that, when you want to kind of maybe give them a little tickle or something like that, then diamond stone's kind of where it's at. So it doesn't replace these, it could be in an addition, but they're expensive. And what I've found as well, as good as this is, and it was quite expensive, this is not perfectly flat. So when I've kind of sharpened, I would never use the back of the blade on a diamond stone, really, because this will you can't clearly flatten this. This is diamond. This is the hardest thing ever. So what can you put? You can't then put this on abrasive paper and flatten it. Of course you can't. So what you get is what you get. So if this isn't flat, there's nothing you can do about it. So this was £80. How expensive do you have to go to be engineering kind of flat? Like how you would get this one if you sand it, or abrasive paper, flatten it on like a granite block or something. This would be absolutely perfect. And the same you could do with oil stones. Ceramic, again, would take a little bit of time to do, but these ones you get perfectly flat. If this isn't perfectly flat, then I would not use it on the back of my blade. I even, sharpening like this, it still can be a bit kind of wonky, especially if you're using like a honing guide like this. If this is not flat here, then it's not going to give you good results there. So it is useful, but not kind of an essential bit of kit, this one. So be warned, I guess. It's not the be all and end all. Just because it cuts really fast doesn't make it the best thing in the world. Then after that is like lapping. Like this one is a bit of leather. This is for kind of honing, like a leather strop, I guess, for like razors and things like that. This is a very cheap thing to do. You can do this yourself. If you have a piece of leather, you can stick, and again, if you want to, I'm not going to go into how you kind of create it, but I made this myself. It's leather stuck to a piece of MDF. It's got a bit of sandpaper underneath for a bit of grip. This is kind of at the end of sharpening, when you want to really polish up your edge. It's not to say that, oh, I don't need to sharpen very well because this is going to be the ultimate answer. It's not. You're going to sharpen on whatever system you have to the finest grit, and then you'll just do a couple of passes on this just to polish it up that tiny bit more, but it is just a couple of passes. But again, I'll go into more detail into this in the sharpening kind of series. But like I said, it's not essential. Clearly this didn't cost me barely anything. You need to have a kind of paste that you put on here just to kind of polish it. But again, it's just to kind of go through the kind of range, I guess. So where I'm kind of getting to is this system, the micro finishing or micro lapping film or micro finishing film. There's a few different companies. In the UK, we have a company called Workshop Heaven. It's an online kind of store, and that's where the school kind of buys theirs from. They sell them as kind of A4 sheets, and at the school we cut them up. We slice them into 4 like this, and then we place them on float glass. They're sticky back, so you can peel off the back of these and you kind of stick them down. Again, I'm not going to do this now, but that's how we do it here, and there's a whole system of sticking it down, but once you watch the sharpening video, then you'll kind of see how I do that. But the reason why we like this system at the school, there's a few different reasons. Main reason, like I said, the initial outlay of cost. So if you were to choose one of these systems, let's just forget about those two for kind of now, oil, water, or ceramic, water stones or ceramic. Well, ceramic are going to cost you a fortune, an absolute fortune. They're very, very expensive to get a good quality one. So you could say, what, 200, 300 pounds. That's huge. Water stones, maybe 200 pounds, you could kind of do that. Oil would be probably to get really good ones. If you get some cheap ones and don't buy it, maybe get second-hand ones, but it would take you an age to flatten them as well. Same with ceramic. If the ceramic is not flat, then no matter what abrasive paper you try and use, you could spend hours trying to flatten these things because it's so hard. So water stones, because they're softer, take less time to flatten. But you can see what I'm getting to, that all of these are going to cost you a fair amount of money, £200–300 for a good set, maybe even more. With these cost £4 each, depending where you are, that they're £4 each, that you cut them into kind of 4 here, so they then become clearly £1 each, and then you stick this to here. So you're not spending hundreds of pounds, you're spending, a few pounds just as an initial cost. Over a lifetime, then yes, maybe you are spending, 80 or 90 or 200 pounds, but it's over a lifetime. So it depends on where you're getting it from. It's like, well, do you mind spending 200 pounds over 5 years? Or do you want to spend £200 or £300 like right now as an initial cost? For us at the school, the students are coming with sometimes very little tools. So if we go, oh, we'll go and spend an extra £300 on this sharpening system, and we just say, no, we have these here at the school and we sell these to the students. And then they give us a few pounds kind of here and there. They're like, oh, I need another sharpening film. Okay, well, yeah, give us a few quid for it, what have you. So that's the system that I like. I'm not saying I don't ever use water stones or oil stones. I do occasionally, and I have used the ceramic one, but as an initial kind of setup, it's cheaper. Float glass or plate glass costs, I don't know, it's very cheap. It's cheap, so that will cost like £15, £20, maybe less. MDF, well, we normally have offcuts of MDF. You stick the glass to MDF, making sure it's flat, and then you stick that to that. So you've got a system that costs maybe £25, you know, or £30, something like that, very cheap to kind of initial setup. And then the pros of this versus those ones, mainly the Waterstone, is that this is float glass. It is flat. So when you wear this down, you're not kind of, you wear this down and then you just peel it off and replace it. This one wears down, it hollows out. This one is not going to hollow out. So that's the big key factor for me, is that cheap initial setup, and then you're not going to hollow it out. And if it gets damaged or like you get tears and stuff in it, well, then you just peel it off and stick another one down. So that's the huge advantage for me. And the main thing, like I said, is that you're not going to be damaging your tools, where like the Waterstone hollows out, you start using it because you haven't got the discipline yet, and then you kind of round over the underside of your plane blade or your chisel, and it's rounded now. You go and flatten this, and then you try and do it again, and you've ruined your blade. So that's the big one really for me. So yeah, that's the kind of summary. I'm not saying they all have their place. I just wanted to give you my kind of overview and my thoughts, I guess. But yeah, please check out the other videos. Like I said, I'm going to have, you know, the sharpening, the this, the that, and there will be there's a link to our kind of Dropbox account, our Dropbox files, and in there will be kind of links to all our other videos, so you don't have to kind of sift through my videos. I will kind of, clearly I'm going to title everything, I'm going to number everything, so it's more of a kind of an index kind of for you guys. But yeah, please kind of, you know, like this video, subscribe, share with your friends, and, you know, stuff like that.